Every Ewok on Endor loved Life Day a lot. But the Emperor, who lived just above Endor, did not. The Emperor hated Life Day the whole Life Day season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be perhaps that his robes were too tight. It could be his face just didn't look right. But I believe the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his robes or his face, he stood there on Life Day Eve, glaring from space, staring down from his Death Star with a sour, Sithy frown at the warm-lighted treetops below on the ground, for he knew every Ewok on Endor beneath was busy now hanging a freshly killed beast. "And they're decorating the trees," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Life Day. It's practically here." And he growled with his gnarled fingers nervously drumming. "I must find a way to keep Life Day from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Ewok children would wake bright and early. They'd rush to their toys, and then, oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. All the noise, 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 noise. Then the Ewoks, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They'd feast on blue milk pudding and rare dewback beast, which was something the Emperor could not stand in the least. "And then," he said, "they'll do something I hate most of all. Every Ewok down on Endor, the small and the small, will stand close together, with their Ewok bells ringing. They'll stand hand in hand, and those Ewoks will start singing. And they'll sing, and they'll sing, and they'll sing, 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 sing." And the more the Emperor thought of this Life Day sing, the more he thought, "I must stop this whole thing. Why, for far too long I've put up with it now. I must stop Life Day from coming. But how?" Then the Emperor got an idea. An awful idea. The Emperor got a wonderful, awful idea. "I know just what to do," he laughed as he strode, and he made a quick Jedi tunic and robe, and he chuckled and snorted, "What a great Sith Lord Khan! With this tunic and robe, I look just like Obi-Wan. All I need is a tauntaun." And he looked around, but since tauntauns were scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop that old Sith? No, he simply said, "If I can't find a tauntaun, I'll make one instead." So he called Darth Vader, and he took some red thread, and he tied 2 horns to the sides of his head. Then he loaded some bags on a Corellian freighter, and when all was set, he called in Lord Vader. Then the Emperor said, "Do it!" And the freighter started down where the Ewoks were asleep in their little tree town. All the windows were dark, fireflies filled the air, as the Ewoks all snoozed like tiny little bears. When he came to the first treehouse, he glared. "This is stop number 1, the Emperor hissed, as he climbed down to the roof with his bags in his fists. Then he leapt down through the rafters, rather harsh on his knees, but if Obi-Wan could do it, then so could he. Then he looked all around at the lights all aglow. "These lights," he said, "are the first things to go." Then he slipped and he slid with a smirk most unpleasant, and around the whole room he took every present, whisties, spearheads, headdresses, drums, slingshots, and hats from rebellion scum. Then he stuffed them in bags, and the galactic dictator tossed them each one by one outside to Darth Vader. Then he slipped in the pantry, and he took the Ewok's feast. He took the blue pudding and the roast dewback beast. He cleaned out the pantry and shut off the light, and even took their last can of Dianoga Delight. He tossed all of the food out the window with glee. "And now," he said, "I will get rid of this tree." Then he grabbed the tree and started to push, when he heard a small sound like a rustling bush. He turned around fast, his scheme briefly stopped, when he saw Wicket Warwick, the little Ewok. The Emperor had been caught by the fuzzy little pest, who had gotten out of bed, unable to rest. And he stared at the Sith and said, "Obi-Wan, why? Why are you taking our Life Day tree? Why?" But you know that old Sith was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "My sweet little boy," the fake Obi-Wan lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it back to the temple, you hear? I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the critter. Then he patted his head and gave him a drink and sent him to bed. And when Wicket the Ewok went to bed without pout, he went to the window and shoved the tree out. The last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went out the window himself, the old liar. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a puff cake that was quickly devoured by a mouse. Then he did the same to the other Ewok houses, leaving only crumbs for the other Endor mouses. It was 1:15 dawn, all the Ewoks still asleep, all the Ewoks still aslumber, when he packed up his freighter, packed it up with their gifts, the whisties, the treats, the tree lights, the spearheads, the roast dewback beast. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Sorrow, he smirked at his spoils with his brow all a-furrow. "Pooh-hoo to the Ewoks," he said, devilishly humming. "They're finding out now that no Life Day is coming. They're waking up now, I know just what they'll do. Their jaws will hang open for a minute or two, then their unblinking eyes will cry boo-hoo." "That's a noise," snickered the Emperor, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the tyrant put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a noise coming out from the trees. It started very soft. Then the sound increased. But this sound was not sad. Why, the sound sounded glad. It couldn't be so, for no presents they had. He stared down at the village, disbelief in his eyes. Then he shook, and he got a shocking surprise. Every Ewok on Endor, the small and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Life Day from coming. It came. Inconceivable as it was, it came just the same. And the Sith Lord stood, his feet cold in the snow, and he pondered and pondered. How can this be so? It came without lights. It came without treats. It came without whisties or dead animals in trees. He pondered and pondered till he could ponder no more. Then the Emperor thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Life Day, he thought, isn't something to abhor. Maybe Life Day, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, on Endor they say that the Emperor's black heart grew 3 sizes that day. And in that moment when his heart didn't feel quite as dark, he flew down with his freighter through the trees and the bark. He brought back their whisties and tree lights and more as the Ewoks all cheered with high-pitched roars. He brought back their pudding and food for the feast. And he himself, the Emperor, carved the dewback beast.